The air reeked of smoke and gunpowder. Rain pelted down on the South Korean base as explosions tore through the night sky. Amid the chaos, a single Nigerian soldier charged into the open, dragging a wounded comrade to safety. Her uniform was torn, her eyes fierce, unshaken by the storm or the bullets screaming past her. That was the first time Park Jae-min saw her.
We have to move!
He hadn't meant to.
Keep running!
He was supposed to be far away, in the safety of his luxury penthouse, sipping aged wine and pretending the world didn't exist. But fate has a cruel sense of humor. His company had a deal with the military base, and that night, he'd come for a private inspection. The meeting had run longer than expected. Technical specifications, security protocols, liability clauses, the usual corporate dance that Jae-min had performed 1,000 times before. He'd been reaching for his Mont Blanc pen to sign the final documents when the first explosion shook the building. The lights flickered, then died. Emergency generators kicked in, bathing everything in harsh red light that made the conference room look like a scene from hell. General Morrison's radio crackled to life with urgent voices reporting breaches, casualties, enemy combatants storming the perimeter. Get him to the safe room. Morrison barked, and suddenly Jae-min was being pushed by armed soldiers toward the reinforced bunker in the basement. His assistant Minesio stumbled beside him, his usual composure shattered by raw terror. Around them, the base erupted into controlled chaos. Soldiers running to their posts, weapons being distributed, orders being shouted in half a dozen languages. But Jae-min stopped at a window overlooking the main courtyard. Through the rain and smoke, he could see them pouring through a breach in the outer wall. Armed militants in black tactical gear, moving with military precision. And he could see the base's defenders fighting back. A desperate stand against overwhelming numbers. Then he saw her. A Nigerian soldier, smaller than most of the men around her but moving with a deadly grace that spoke of years in combat. She was in the open, completely exposed, dragging a wounded comrade toward cover while bullets kicked up geysers of mud around her feet. The wounded man was twice her size, dead weight in her arms, but she didn't slow down, didn't hesitate. Her face was set in fierce concentration, rain streaming down her dark skin, and in that moment she looked like some warrior queen from ancient legend. "Sir, we need to move." The escort grabbed Jae-min's arm, trying to pull him away. But Jae-min couldn't move, couldn't breathe. He watched as she got her comrade to safety, then immediately turned back toward the gunfire, back toward the death that waited in that rain-soaked hell. She raised her weapon, providing covering fire for another group of soldiers making their retreat. Her movements were economical, precise. Every shot counted. Every second was calculated. An explosion went off near her position. The shockwave threw her sideways, but she rolled with it, came up firing. A militant charged her position and Jae-min's heart stopped, but she was faster, dropping him with 2 shots to center mass before he could close the distance. Another explosion. Closer this time. The window Jae-min stood behind cracked, spiderweb spreading across the reinforced glass. "Mr. Park now." The soldier physically dragged him away, and the last thing Jae-min saw before they descended into the bunker was that soldier, that woman, still standing, still fighting, unbreakable in the face of chaos. The attack lasted 53 minutes. Jae-min spent every one of them in that concrete tomb, listening to explosions and gunfire, his mind replaying that image over and over. The way she'd moved, the absolute absence of fear in her eyes, the casual way she'd faced death, like it was an old acquaintance she'd learned to tolerate. He'd built his fortune on reading people, understanding what drove them. Greed, ambition, fear, pride. He knew all the motivations that made the world turn. But watching her, he'd seen something he didn't understand. Something that both terrified and fascinated him. What kind of person ran toward death without hesitation? What kind of strength did that take? What kind of damage had forged that strength? When the all-clear finally sounded, Jae-min emerged into a changed world. The base was scarred but standing. 5 militants dead, 3 captured. Casualties on the base side were miraculously light, 12 wounded, none fatal. General Morrison attributed it to the quick response of his peacekeeping forces, but Jae-min had seen the truth. He'd seen soldiers like that woman making the split-second decisions that saved lives. "The inspection will need to be rescheduled," Morrison said, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. "I apologize for." The soldier, Jae-min interrupted. The Nigerian woman who was in the courtyard. Who is she? Morrison's expression shifted to something like respect. Sergeant Amara Obi. One of the finest soldiers I've ever served with. She's pulled stunts like tonight more times than I can count. Always first into danger, always last out. He paused, something heavy settling over his features. Lost most of her squad in an ambush back in Nigeria 2 years ago. Been carrying that weight ever since. Some soldiers break under that kind of guilt. She just got harder, sharper, more dangerous. Guilt. Jae-min understood guilt. He'd built an empire on the ashes of his father's failed company, climbing over competitors he'd destroyed, partners he'd betrayed. Different kind of survival, same weight of the dead behind you. He should have left then. Should have gotten in his car, driven back to his world of quarterly reports and shareholder meetings, and forgotten about the woman who'd nearly died in front of him. That would have been the smart play. The safe play. But Park Jae-min hadn't become one of South Korea's youngest billionaires by playing it safe. The next morning he returned to the base. He came bearing gifts. An elaborate arrangement of orchids and roses that his secretary had assured him were appropriate for expressing gratitude. He'd practice what he'd say, how he'd phrase it to sound sincere rather than condescending. He'd even had Mincio research Nigerian customs to avoid any cultural missteps. What he hadn't prepared for was seeing Amara Obi in daylight. She stood in the training yard, her hair pulled back in a tight bun, sweat glistening on her dark skin despite the cool morning air. She was running drills with a group of younger soldiers, moving through combat sequences with a brutal efficiency that made his rehearsed speech die in his throat. She moved like violence given form, precise, controlled, lethal. When she finally noticed him approaching, this man in his designer suit carrying flowers like some lovesick fool, her expression didn't change. She simply stopped, grabbed a towel from a nearby bench and waited. Her eyes in daylight were even more striking. Deep brown, almost black and absolutely unreadable. Sergeant Obi, he began, suddenly aware of how ridiculous he must look. I wanted to thank you for last night. What you did. I was doing my job, she said, her voice low and clipped with a Nigerian accent that made every word sound weighted with meaning. She didn't look at the flowers. Didn't even acknowledge they existed. Still, you saved lives. You saved. He trailed off, realizing he'd been about to say you saved me, which was both true and pathetic. You risked yourself. That deserves recognition. Recognition. Now she looked at him, really looked at him, and there was something cold in that gaze. Mr. Park, I don't need flowers. I don't need thanks. I need to get back to training my unit, so they don't die the next time militants decide to attack. She turned away. Have a good day. And walked away. Just like that. No smile, no acknowledgement of his effort, no recognition of who he was or what his gratitude might mean in the world beyond this base. She simply dismissed him like he was an irritating distraction and returned to her drills. For Park Jae-min, the billionaire who had never been ignored, never been refused, who'd had models and heiresses and celebrities all vying for his attention. That was the moment everything changed. His pride burned, his curiosity ignited. And something else, something deeper and more dangerous began to take root in his chest. He left the flowers on a bench and drove back to Seoul in silence, Mincio wisely saying nothing about the rejection they'd both witnessed. But as the city skyline came into view, glass towers reaching toward a gray sky, Jae-min found himself smiling despite the sting. She was nothing like the women he knew. She wasn't impressed by status. She didn't care for money or fame. She didn't even know who he was. To her, he was just another man standing in the way of duty. And that made him want to see her again. Needed to. Over the next week he tried everything. He sent more flowers, she returned them unopened. He sent a handwritten note expressing his admiration for her service. No response. He even made a substantial donation to the Nigerian military family's fund in her name, hoping word would reach her. Nothing. It was like trying to breach a fortress wall with nothing but his bare hands. Every attempt bounced off her indifference, leaving him more frustrated and more intrigued. Women had always been easy to understand, easy to charm. But Amara Obi was a cipher, and he found himself obsessed with cracking her code. Finally, he crafted what he thought was a brilliant solution. Park Industries needed enhanced security for several high-profile events over the coming months. He could offer Sergeant Obi a position as his private bodyguard. A legitimate job that would keep her close, allow him to understand her, prove that his interest was more than just fleeting curiosity. When he returned to the base to make his offer, he arrived in the evening this time, and found her in the gym, alone, attacking a heavy bag with a ferocity that bordered on rage. She wasn't wearing her uniform now, just a tank top and combat pants, and the muscles in her arms and shoulders flexed with each strike. The bag swung under her assault, the sound of impact echoing through the empty space like gunshots. Her breathing was controlled, rhythmic, but there was something wild in her movements, like she was fighting something only she could see. He waited in the doorway watching. Strike, strike, strike. Each blow precise and devastating. This wasn't training. This was exorcism. She was beating demons out of that bag, memories made physical so she could hit them back. After several minutes she paused, grabbing her water bottle. That's when she saw him. "You're persistent," she said, not quite looking at him. "I'll give you that. I have a proposition for you," Jae-min said, stepping into the gym. "No. You haven't heard what it is yet. Don't need to. The answer is no." She took a long drink, then set the bottle down with deliberate care. "You should go back to your penthouse, Mr. Park. Back to your world. You don't belong here." "Maybe not. But I'm offering you something you might actually want." He moved closer, keeping his voice level. "A position as my private security consultant. Excellent pay, flexible hours, opportunities to find someone else." She stared him dead in the eyes now, and he saw something in that gaze that made him take an involuntary step back. Not fear but something colder. Contempt. "I don't protect men like you." The words hit like a physical blow. "Men like me? What does that mean?" "Men who think money solves everything. Men who've never had to fight for anything real. Men who show up with flowers and job offers because they're bored and want something new to play with." She picked up her towel, her expression hardening further. "I've seen too many people die, Mr. Park. Good people. People worth 10 of you. I'm not going to waste my time protecting someone who doesn't understand what's worth protecting." Each word was a knife precisely placed. And the worst part was she wasn't entirely wrong. He had been playing. He had thought this was another puzzle to solve. Another challenge to overcome with enough resources and determination. But standing there, facing her brutal honesty, something cracked inside him. Something he'd kept carefully armored for years. "You're right," he said quietly. The admission surprised them both. "I don't understand. I've spent my entire life in boardrooms and penthouses. The only battles I've fought were hostile takeovers and proxy wars with shareholders. I've never put my life on the line for anything. Then why are you here?" Her voice was still hard, but there was something else there now. Curiosity, maybe. Or confusion. "Because yesterday, I watched you risk your life without hesitation. And I realized I've spent my entire life calculating risks, minimizing exposure, protecting myself above everything else." He met her eyes, letting his guard down for the first time in years. "You're the exact opposite of everything I've become. You terrify me. And you fascinate me. And I don't know what to do with that." For a long moment she said nothing. Just studied him like he was a tactical problem she was trying to solve. Then, softly, almost reluctantly, "Fascination fades, Mr. Park. Reality has a way of killing it." "Maybe," he agreed. "But I'd like the chance to find out. Not as an employer. Not as someone trying to buy your attention. Just as someone who wants to understand." She turned back to the punching bag, wrapping her hands for another round. But before she resumed, she said without looking at him, "I finished training at 1900 hours. There's a cafe off base. Small place, nothing fancy. If you're there, and if you can sit through an hour without checking your phone or talking about money or trying to impress me, I'll consider not reporting you for harassment." It wasn't agreement. It wasn't even friendliness. But it was something. "I'll be there," he said. "We'll see," she replied. And her first strike against the bag thundered through the gym like a challenge. Jae-min left feeling like he just won and lost simultaneously. She'd agreed to meet him, but on her terms, in her world. And the way she'd looked at him, like he was something small and insignificant, had shaken him more than any business failure ever had. He spent the rest of the day restless, unable to focus on the stack of contracts Min SEO had prepared for his review. His mind kept returning to her, to the controlled violence of her movements, to the weight of grief he'd seen behind her eyes, to the way she dismissed everything he'd built his identity on as meaningless. At 1850 hours, he was sitting in the cafe she'd mentioned. It was exactly as she'd described, small, nothing fancy, worn wooden tables, fluorescent lighting, a menu handwritten on a chalkboard. The kind of place he'd never normally enter, let alone spend time in. But he ordered coffee and waited, his phone silenced in his pocket. 1900 came and went. Then 1910. 1920. With each passing minute, he felt more foolish. She wasn't coming. Of course she wasn't coming. Why would she waste her time on someone she clearly held in such contempt? At 1927 she walked in. Still in her uniform, her hair still pulled back tight, but there was something different in her eyes. Not warmth exactly, but something less cold. She ordered black coffee and sat down across from him without preamble. "You're still here," she said. "I said I would be. People say lots of things." She wrapped her hands around her cup, and he noticed scars on her knuckles. Old ones layered over each other. "Usually means nothing." "I meant it." She studied him for a moment, then took a sip of her coffee. "You want to understand? Fine. What do you want to know?" "Everything," he said honestly. "But start with why you're so angry." Her laugh was sharp, bitter. "Angry? That's what you see. Among other things." She was quiet for a long time, staring into her coffee like it held answers. When she finally spoke, her voice had lost some of its edge. "I'm angry because I'm alive when I shouldn't be. I'm angry because good people died while I survived. I'm angry because every morning I wake up and they don't, and there's no reason for it except dumb luck and maybe being a little bit faster, a little bit luckier." "The ambush," Jae-min said quietly. "General Morrison told me." "Did he tell you about Chukwuma, my squad leader?" "He was 43 years old, had 3 kids back in Lagos. He was 2 months from retirement." Her fingers tightened around her cup. "We were providing security for an oil facility in the Niger Delta. Standard patrol, routine assignment. Then the militants hit us from 3 sides. Chukwuma saw the ambush first. Saw the shooter targeting me. And he..." She stopped, swallowed hard. "He stepped in front of the bullet, looked me right in the eyes and told me to run. Then he died." The words fell between them like stones. Jae-min wanted to offer comfort, wanted to say something that would ease that pain. But he knew instinctively that platitudes would only make it worse. 5 others died that day, she continued, her voice flat now, emotionless. The way trauma survivors learn to speak about their trauma, when the feelings became too large to feel. Obiora, Ngozi, Emmanuel, James, and Adana. I knew their families, knew their dreams. Obiora was saving to build his mother a house. Ngozi was engaged. Emmanuel loved terrible American action movies. A ghost of a smile, then gone. I see their faces every night. Every single night. And I can't make it stop. "So you keep fighting," Jae-min said. "So I keep fighting," she agreed. "Because maybe if I save enough people, if I fight hard enough, if I prove I was worth saving, maybe the nightmares will stop. Maybe I'll finally deserve to be alive. You shouldn't have to earn the right to survive." She looked at him, then really looked at him, and he saw the exhaustion behind her eyes. The bone-deep weariness of someone who'd been at war too long. "Easy for you to say. You've never had to justify your existence with someone else's death." "No," he admitted. "But I've had to justify it with someone else's failure." He found himself talking before he could stop, words spilling out that he'd never said to anyone. "My father built a company. Not huge but successful. Employed 300 people, supported their families. Then he made some bad investments. Got in over his head. Lost everything. And when he lost everything, Jae-min stopped, the memory still sharp after 15 years. "He killed himself. Left me with his debts and his shame and a note that said, 'Be better than me.'" Amara's expression softened slightly. "So I became better," Jae-min continued. "I rebuilt. I took Park Industries from ashes and turned it into an empire. But to do that I had to be ruthless. Had to crush competitors. Had to make decisions that destroyed other people's lives so I could succeed. Different kind of blood. But it stains just the same. He met her eyes. I see their faces too. Every time I close a deal that puts someone else out of business. Every time I cut jobs to improve margins. Every time I choose profit over people. And I tell myself it's justified because I'm building something. Because I'm proving I'm not my father. But sometimes I wonder if I'm just a different kind of monster. They sat in silence for a long moment. Two people who'd both stared into darkness and somehow kept walking. We're a mess, Amara finally said. Completely, Jae-min agreed. This is a terrible idea. Probably. You're still going to come back to that base, aren't you? If you'll let me. She sighed, and for the first time he saw her smile. It was small, barely there, but real. Fine. But no more flowers. No more job offers. And if you show up in that ridiculous suit again, I'm making you run laps. Deal, he said, unable to stop his own smile. That night was the beginning. Not of romance, but of something more fundamental. Recognition. Two wounded people circling each other, seeing in the other a reflection of their own damage. Over the next months, Jae-min became a fixture at the base. He showed up during Amara's downtime and they'd talk. Sometimes about serious things, her experiences in combat, his struggles with guilt and legacy. Sometimes about nothing, bad movies, terrible coffee, the absurdity of military bureaucracy versus corporate bureaucracy. He learned about her nightmares, the way she slept with her service weapon beside her bed, the hypervigilance that made crowds and loud noises nearly unbearable. She learned about his insomnia, the way success had left him isolated and empty, surrounded by people who wanted something from him but no one who actually knew him. Slowly, carefully, she began to let him in. The walls didn't come down all at once. They eroded brick by brick, conversation by conversation. He stopped calling her Sergeant Obi and started saying Amara, in a way that made her name sound like it meant something. She stopped calling him Mr. Park and started calling him Jae-min, dropping the formality that had been her last line of defense. His world and hers couldn't have been more different. But in the spaces between they found common ground. Found that trauma spoke a universal language. Found that people who'd survived impossible things understood each other in ways the comfortable never could. 3 months passed like this. 3 months of Jae-min learning what it felt like to care about someone beyond what they could do for him. 3 months of Amara learning that maybe, possibly, not every wealthy man was a shallow disappointment waiting to happen. His friends noticed the change. At a charity gala, his longtime friend and business rival, Kang Hyun-woo, cornered him with a knowing smirk. You're different, Hyun-woo said, sipping champagne that cost more per bottle than most people earned in a week. Softer. It's unsettling. I'm spending time with someone, Jae-min admitted. It's different. Different how? Another model. She's a soldier. Hyun-woo nearly choked on his champagne. A soldier? Park Jae-min is dating a soldier? The man who wouldn't touch anything that didn't come with a designer label. We're not dating. We're just. Jae-min trailed off, realizing he didn't have words for what they were doing. We're friends. Be careful, my friend, Hyun-woo said, his smirk fading into something more serious. Women like that, women with principles and pride and actual convictions, they'll break your heart in ways the socialites never could. Because when they walk away, they mean it. And they won't come back just because you throw money at the problem. Jae-min thought about that conversation later that night. Standing on his penthouse balcony, Seoul's lights spread out below like a galaxy of earthbound stars. Hyun-woo was probably right. But for the first time in his life, Jae-min was willing to risk his heart for something real. Then one Tuesday evening everything changed. Jae-min was in his office reviewing quarterly reports when his head of security, a former intelligence officer named Kim, requested an urgent meeting. We have a problem, Kim said without preamble, spreading photographs across Jae-min's desk. Choi Jin-ho is out. The name hit Jae-min like ice water. Choi Jin-ho, a man he'd helped put in prison 5 years ago during a corporate espionage case that had nearly destroyed Park Industries. Choi had been selling company secrets to a criminal syndicate, not just to competitors but to actual criminals. Drug traffickers, arms dealers, people who killed without hesitation. When Choi was convicted, he'd screamed threats across the courtroom. Promised revenge. Promised to destroy everything Jae-min had built. Promised to make him suffer. And now he was out. Early release for good behavior. How long has he been free? Jae-min asked, his voice carefully controlled. 3 weeks. We only just discovered it. He changed his name, went underground. But he's resurfaced. Kim tapped one of the photographs. This was taken 2 days ago. He's made contact with members of his old syndicate. And he's been asking questions about you. Where you live. Where you go. Who you spend time with. The last part made Jae-min's blood run cold. Who I spend time with. He has surveillance photos. Kim spread more images across the desk, and Jae-min felt his world tilt. Photos of him leaving the military base. Photos of him at the cafe with Amara. Photos of them together talking, occasionally laughing. Someone had been watching, learning, identifying vulnerabilities. He knows about Sergeant Obi, Kim said grimly. And based on his past behavior and current associates, I assess the threat level as critical. He's planning something, Mr. Park. And he's planning to use her to hurt you. Jae-min's hands clenched into fists. What are my options? Leave the country. Immediately. Take Sergeant Obi with you if possible. Go somewhere he can't reach you until we can neutralize the threat. I'm not running. Sir, these people don't play games. Choi's associates have body counts. They're professionals. Running isn't cowardice, it's survival. But Jae-min was already shaking his head. If I run, every enemy I've ever made will see weakness. They'll come for me. For my company. For everyone associated with me. He looked at the photos of Amara. His chest tight with fear he refused to acknowledge. I need to tell her. Warn her. That would be advisable, yes. Jae-min grabbed his phone but then stopped. A phone call wouldn't be enough. This needed to be face to face. He needed to see her, needed to make sure she understood the danger. 40 minutes later, he was at the base, asking for Sergeant Obi. They found her in the armory, cleaning her service weapon with the methodical care of someone who understood that equipment failure meant death. She looked up as he approached, and her expression immediately shifted from neutral to concerned. Jae-min? What's wrong? You look terrible. We need to talk. Privately. They found an empty office and Jae-min laid it all out. Choi Jin-ho. The criminal syndicate. The surveillance photos. The very real threat that was closing in on both of them. When he finished, Amara was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked, how dangerous are these people? Very. Choi's associates have military backgrounds. They've killed before. They won't hesitate to kill again. Instead of fear, her expression turned calculating. Professional. The soldier taking over. Show me the surveillance photos. Jae-min pulled them up on his phone, and Amara studied each one with intense focus. These were taken by professionals. Good angles, clear images, multiple locations. They've been tracking you for at least 2 weeks, maybe longer. She looked up at him. You need to leave Seoul. Tonight. Go somewhere they can't find you. That's what Kim said. I'm not running. Yes, you are. Because men like this don't play games, Jae-min. They kill people. Efficiently. Without remorse. And they're very good at it. Then I'll hire more security. No. Her voice was firm, brooking no argument. More security just means more casualties. You need to leave. Disappear until this threat is neutralized. I won't abandon my company. And I won't abandon you. Her expression softened slightly, but her voice remained hard. This isn't about abandonment. This is about survival. Please, Jae-min. For once in your life, don't let your pride make you stupid. But he was already shaking his head. If I run, he wins. If I hide, everyone I've ever stood against will see weakness. I can't do that. My father ran from his problems and it destroyed him. I won't make that mistake. Your father's situation was different. Was it? He faced insurmountable odds and chose the coward's way out. I won't dishonor his memory by doing the same. Amara grabbed his arm, her grip tight enough to hurt. There's no honor in dying, Jae-min. There's no glory in getting yourself killed because you're too proud to retreat. I've seen men die for stupid reasons. Don't make me watch another one. The raw emotion in her voice stopped him cold. This wasn't just tactical assessment anymore. This was personal. Then come with me, he said quietly. Help me. You're the only person I trust to see this coming. I can't just leave my post. Emergency leave. Protecting a civilian national from a credible threat. Your commanding officer would approve it, especially given the circumstances. She stared at him for a long moment, conflict clear in her eyes. Then slowly she nodded. Fine. But we do this my way. Total security lockdown. You follow my orders without question. And the moment I say we need to evacuate, we evacuate. Understood. Understood. I'm going to regret this, she muttered. But there was something else in her eyes now. Something that looked like fear, and that scared him more than anything else. Because Amara Obi didn't fear much. That night, Amara went to her commanding officer and explained the situation. The threat against a civilian national. Her unique relationship with the target. The need for immediate protective custody. General Morrison didn't like it, but he'd seen Amara in action enough times to trust her judgment. He granted her 2 weeks emergency leave. 2 weeks that would change everything. Amara moved into Jae-min's penthouse that same night, despite his concerns about putting her in the line of fire. She brushed them off with military pragmatism. They already know about me. Might as well make the battlefield one I can control. And control it she did. Within hours, Jae-min's luxury penthouse was transformed into something closer to a military bunker. Amara installed additional cameras, reinforced entry points, established security protocols for every scenario. She mapped out sightlines, identified potential breaches, created contingency plans for everything from direct assault to siege warfare. She was all business, treating him like any other VIP protection assignment. Professional. Distant. Except late at night, when exhaustion finally forced her to rest, he'd find her on his couch, her service weapon on the coffee table, her body positioned to see all entrances. You don't have to sleep out here, he told her one night. I have 3 guest rooms. Guest rooms have limited sight lines, she replied without opening her eyes. This position gives me the best tactical advantage. Go to sleep, Jae-min. I've got watch. He wanted to argue. Wanted to tell her she was carrying too much, that she needed real rest, that this wasn't sustainable. But he also knew that arguing with Amara when she'd made up her mind was pointless. So instead he sat in the chair across from her just watching. Watching the way she never fully relaxed. The way her hand stayed close to her weapon even in sleep. The way she'd jolt awake at every small sound. Eyes immediately sharp and assessing before she realized where she was. Kim's intelligence reports grew increasingly dire over the next few days. Choi Jin-ho had assembled a team, 8 men with military backgrounds and criminal records. They were conducting detailed surveillance, mapping Jae-min's routines, identifying security vulnerabilities. An attack was coming. It was just a matter of when. We should move you to a safe house, Kim urged during a secure video call. Somewhere off the grid. Somewhere they can't find you. But Amara shook her head, her expression thoughtful. That just delays the inevitable. Eventually we'd have to surface and they'd be waiting. Better to control the battlefield. She looked at Jae-min. We turn this penthouse into a fortress. We make them come to us on our terms. When they attack, we'll be ready. You're talking about turning a civilian residence into a combat zone, Kim said incredulously. Against 8 trained killers. That's insane, Sergeant. No, Amara replied calmly. That's tactics. They expect him to run or hide behind layers of security. We give them exactly what they don't expect, a target that fights back. They'll be overconfident. That's when we take them. And if you're wrong? If they bring more men than expected? Then I do my job, she said simply. I keep him alive. Whatever it takes. The certainty in her voice left no room for doubt. Kim looked like he wanted to argue further, but even through the video call, he could see there was no point. When Sergeant Amara Obi made up her mind about something, the world itself would have to bend. Over the next 3 days, Amara transformed Jae-min's world. She brought in weapons from her contacts, not just her service pistol, but tactical rifles, ammunition, body armor. She reinforced windows, created defensive positions using furniture, stockpiled medical supplies. She drilled Jae-min on basic weapons handling, teaching him how to shoot straight, how to take cover, how to stay alive when everything went to hell. "You're not going to win any marksman competitions," she told him after one practice session in his private gym, which she'd turned into an improvised firing range using ballistic gel and sound dampeners. "But you can hit a man-sized target at 10 meters. That's enough." "Enough for what?" he asked, ejecting the magazine from the Glock she'd given him. "Enough to buy yourself time. Enough to maybe save your own life if I'm not there." She took the weapon from him, checking it with practiced efficiency. "Ideally, you'll never need to use this. But if you do, remember center mass, keep firing until the threat stops. Don't hesitate. Don't think. Just act." "You make it sound so simple." "It is simple. It's just not easy." She holstered the weapon and looked at him. "The first time you point a gun at another human being, every instinct will tell you to stop. Your conscience will scream that this is wrong. But in that moment you have to remember they came here to kill you. They made the choice. You're just responding." Jae-min wondered if he'd be able to do it when the time came. Wondered if he had that kind of steel in him. Looking at Amara, seeing the quiet confidence in her eyes, he hoped he'd never have to find out. But hope was a luxury they couldn't afford. On the fourth night, Kim called with urgent news. His voice was tight with tension. "They're moving. Multiple vehicles spotted heading toward your location. ETA 15 minutes, maybe less." Amara was already in motion before Kim finished speaking. She'd been expecting this, preparing for it, and now that the moment had arrived, she moved with the calm precision of someone who'd done this 100 times before. "Get to the safe room," she told Jae-min, checking her rifle with quick, efficient movements. "Lock it from the inside. Don't come out until I come for you. No matter what you hear, no matter what happens, you stay inside. Clear?" "Amara." "Clear." Her voice was harder now, the soldier taking complete control. "Clear," he said reluctantly. She handed him the Glock, their fingers brushing for just a moment. "Safety's off. You remember what I taught you. Point at the bad guys, pull the trigger." The ghost of a smile crossed her face. "That's my student. Now go." "And Jae-min." She looked at him and for just a second the soldier mask slipped. "Stay alive." "That's an order." He wanted to say something. Wanted to tell her to be careful, to not take unnecessary risks, to remember that her life mattered too. But the words stuck in his throat, and then she was pushing him toward the reinforced panic room in the center of his penthouse. The safe room was exactly that. A steel-reinforced box with its own air supply, communications equipment, and enough supplies to last a week. It had been installed when he'd bought the penthouse, more as a status symbol than anything practical. Now it might be the only thing that kept him alive. He sealed the door behind him and immediately pulled up the security monitors. 12 screens showed different angles of his penthouse and the building's exterior. He could see Amara taking position in the main living area, using his expensive Italian furniture as improvised cover. She'd killed the main lights, leaving only emergency illumination that cast everything in shades of red and shadow. She looked like a predator waiting for prey. The power cut first. Jae-min expected it, but still felt his stomach drop as the building went dark. Emergency systems kicked in immediately, but the sudden shift from his penthouse's usual soft lighting to harsh emergency floods made everything feel alien. Wrong. Then he saw them on the exterior cameras. 3 vehicles pulled up outside his building. Black SUVs with tinted windows. Men poured out. 8 of them, just as Kim had predicted. They moved with military precision, covering each other's angles, communicating with hand signals. Professional. Experienced. Deadly. They bypassed his building's security with frightening ease. The door guards never had a chance, taken down with suppressors and tranquilizer darts before they could raise an alarm. These men weren't just killers. They were professionals who'd done this before. Jae-min's hand shook as he watched them enter the stairwell, moving up toward his penthouse on the 43rd floor. 16 floors below him but closing fast. He wanted to warn Amara, but she'd already seen them. On the monitor, he watched her adjust her position slightly, her rifle trained on the penthouse's main entrance. The attack came fast. The stairwell door to his floor exploded inward, not with crude violence, but with a shaped charge that took out the lock and hinges in one controlled blast. Smoke billowed through the opening, and then they were coming through. The first man made it 2 steps before Amara dropped him. 2 shots center mass and he went down without a sound. The second man tried to use his body as cover, but Amara was already moving, flowing to a new position before they could track her location. She fought like fire, precise, deadly, unstoppable. Jae-min watched in horrified fascination as she systematically dismantled the assault team. She used every advantage, superior knowledge of the terrain, prepared defensive positions, the element of surprise. She'd been right about them being overconfident. They'd expected a soft target hiding behind hired security. Instead, they'd found a warrior who'd survived far worse than they could imagine. But there were too many. For every one she dropped, another found cover, established a firing position, closed the net. They were adapting, learning. One man threw a flashbang, and even through the monitors, Jae-min saw the white-hot explosion that would have blinded and deafened anyone nearby. But Amara had anticipated it. She'd already rolled behind his kitchen island, eyes closed against the blast. When the light faded, she was up and moving again, engaging 2 targets who tried to flank her position. She was magnificent, terrifying, and slowly losing ground. Jae-min watched her take a round to her left shoulder. Not a killing shot, but enough to slow her down. Blood bloomed dark against her tactical vest, but she didn't stop, didn't even pause. She just adjusted her grip on her weapon and kept fighting. Then Choi Jin-ho entered through the shattered door. Jae-min recognized him from the photos, but seeing him in person was different. Choi had aged in prison, harder, leaner, with eyes that held nothing but hate. He carried a pistol in one hand, and he moved with the confidence of someone who thought he'd already won. He was looking for Jae-min, scanning the penthouse, trying to locate his real target. Amara saw him too. She pivoted, her weapon tracking toward him, but 2 of his men stepped between them, forcing her to engage. She dropped one, wounded the other, but it gave Choi the opening he needed. He was heading toward the safe room. Somehow he knew where it was. Someone had given him blueprints, detailed plans of the penthouse's layout. Jae-min's heart hammered against his ribs. Amara was pinned down, wounded, fighting off multiple attackers. Kim and his backup team were still minutes away, and Choi Jin-ho was walking straight toward him. The safe room door was reinforced steel, designed to withstand anything short of military-grade explosives. But Jae-min had no illusions about how long it would hold against someone determined to get through. He watched on the monitors as Choi stopped outside the door. The man pulled something from his bag. Plastic explosive, Jae-min realized with growing dread. Enough to breach the door. In the living area, Amara was fighting desperately to break free, to reach him, but there were still 3 men between her and Choi. She'd taken another hit, this one to her leg, he thought, though the cameras couldn't show him how bad it was. But she was slowing down, getting tired. Even the best soldier in the world couldn't fight forever. The first explosion hit the safe room door. The whole room shook and Jae-min stumbled back, his ears ringing even through the reinforced walls. The monitor showed Choi reloading, preparing for a second blast. The second explosion was stronger. The locking mechanism groaned but held. On the third blast, something gave. The door shuttered, and Jae-min could see light through a crack where the frame had buckled. He raised the Glock Amara had given him, his hands shaking so badly he could barely keep it level. Every instinct screamed at him to find another way out, to hide, to survive. But there was nowhere to go. The safe room had only one exit, and Choi Jin-ho was standing right outside it. The door swung open with a screech of tortured metal. Choi Jin-ho stood there, backlit by emergency lighting, his pistol aimed directly at Jae-min's chest. For a moment, neither man moved. They just stared at each other, the billionaire and the man whose life he'd destroyed. Park Jae-min, Choi said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. 5 years. 5 years I've waited for this moment. This isn't personal, Jae-min said, trying to keep his voice steady. You were stealing from the company, endangering innocent people. I did what had to be done. You destroyed me. Choi screamed, and there was genuine madness in his eyes. Took everything. My career, my reputation, my family. My wife divorced me. My children won't speak to me. I lost everything because of you. You lost everything because of your own choices. No. Choi's hand shook with rage. You took everything from me. And now I'm going to take everything from you. Starting with that soldier bitch who thinks she can protect you. The words ignited something in Jae-min. Rage, protective and primal, burned away the fear. Leave her out of this. This is between you and me. Oh, I intend to make her watch you die first. Then I'll kill her. Slowly. Make sure she knows she failed. Choi smiled, and it was the smile of someone who'd passed beyond reason into pure vengeance. But first. He never finished the sentence. Amara appeared behind him like an avenging angel, blood streaming from wounds on her shoulder and leg, her eyes blazing with fury. She'd fought her way through 3 armed men, taken multiple hits, pushed her body past its limits, and she still moved with deadly purpose. She drove her knife into Choi's gun arm, forcing him to drop the weapon. He screamed and tried to turn, but she was faster. She swept his legs and put him on the ground with brutal efficiency, her knee on his spine, her knife at his throat. But Choi had one last trick. As he fell, he pulled a second pistol from an ankle holster, something she hadn't seen, hadn't anticipated. He was bringing it around toward her head. The angle was awkward, but at this range it didn't need to be perfect. Time slowed to a crawl. Jae-min saw it happening. Saw the weapon rising. Saw Amara's momentary distraction as she secured her first takedown. Saw the angle of the shot that would end her life. And he moved. He wasn't fast. Wasn't trained. But he was close and he was desperate. He threw himself forward, his body intercepting the path of the bullet. The shot caught him high in the chest, slightly to the left. Pain exploded through him like nothing he'd ever experienced, white-hot and all-consuming. He heard someone screaming and realized distantly that it was him. He heard Amara scream his name. Heard more gunfire, her service weapon firing 3 times in rapid succession. Heard Choi's body hit the floor with a heavy thud, and knew without seeing that the man was dead. Then the world tilted sideways and he was falling. Amara caught him before he hit the ground, her hands immediately pressing against his wound, trying to stop the bleeding. Stay with me, she was saying, her voice raw and desperate. Stay with me, Jae-min. Don't you dare die. Don't you dare. He tried to speak, but blood filled his mouth. His vision was graying at the edges, sound becoming distant and muffled. He could see her face above him, beautiful and terrified and covered in blood. Some of it his, some of it hers. Some of it probably belonged to the men she'd killed to reach him. Stupid. She was sobbing now, her professional mask completely shattered. You stupid, stupid man. Why would you do that? Why? He wanted to tell her. Wanted to explain that in that moment, watching that gun rise toward her head, he'd understood something fundamental. That his life, his money, his company, his pride, all of it meant nothing compared to keeping her alive. That somewhere in these past months, she'd become more important than breathing. But the words wouldn't come. The darkness was closing in, soft and final. The last thing he heard before everything went black was Amara's voice, broken and pleading. Please don't leave me. Please. I love you. Do you hear me? I love you. So you have to stay. You have to. And then nothing. He woke up 2 days later in a private hospital room. The first thing he saw was white ceiling tiles. Pristine. Sterile. The complete opposite of the blood-soaked chaos that was his last memory. The second thing he registered was the beeping of medical equipment. Steady, rhythmic, oddly comforting. The third thing was pain. A deep, aching throb in his chest that intensified when he tried to breathe. And the fourth thing was Amara. She was asleep in a chair beside his bed. Her arm in a sling, white bandages visible beneath her clothes. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her hair hung loose around her face instead of pulled back in its usual severe bun. She looked exhausted, wrecked, beautiful. As if sensing his gaze, her eyes opened. For a moment she just stared at him. Then her face crumpled and tears started streaming down her cheeks. Hey, he croaked, his throat dry as sand. Hey, she whispered back, reaching out with her good hand to grip his. You're awake. You're actually awake. How long? 2 days. You've been in and out, mostly out. The bullet. Her voice caught. It hit your chest. Just missed your heart by 2 centimeters. 2 centimeters, Jae-min. The doctors said if it had been any closer. But it wasn't. But it could have been. She was crying openly now, and he realized he'd never seen her cry before. Not like this. Not with her guard completely down. You jumped in front of a bullet. Who does that? What kind of idiot throws his life away? For you, he interrupted, his voice weak but steady. I'd throw my life away for you. Every time. Without hesitation. She made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. You can't do that. You can't make me care about you and then try to die. That's not fair. You care about me? Despite the pain, despite everything, he found himself smiling. Of course I care about you, you idiot. She stopped, swallowed hard. When I saw you fall, when I saw all that blood, I thought I'd lost you. And I realized that somewhere along the way I'd started caring about you. Really caring. Not just as a friend or someone I was protecting, but... She took a shaky breath. I don't know what love is supposed to feel like. But if it's this terror of losing someone, this need to keep them safe even if it costs everything, this weird warmth in my chest every time I see them smile, then yeah, maybe love. I love you too, he said, and saying it felt like the easiest thing in the world. I think I have since the moment I saw you run into danger without hesitation. You're everything I'm not. Everything I wish I could be. She leaned forward carefully, mindful of both their injuries, and pressed her forehead against his. We're disasters, she whispered. The best kind, he replied. She kissed him then, softly, carefully, like he was something precious that might break. It was a kiss that tasted of tears and relief and promise. A kiss that said you're alive and I was so scared and never again all at once. When she pulled back, she was almost smiling through her tears. So what now? You're a billionaire with a bullet wound, and I'm a soldier who fell for her assignment. We're kind of a mess. The best kind of mess, he said. Besides, I'm going to need someone to help me through physical therapy, and to keep me from making stupid decisions in the future. That's a full-time job. I'm offering full-time employment then, with benefits. She laughed, and the sound was like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Are you seriously trying to hire me again? Now, while you're lying in a hospital bed with a bullet wound? No, he said, suddenly serious despite the pain medication making everything slightly fuzzy. I'm asking you to stay. Not as my bodyguard or my employee or anything professional. Just stay. Be with me. Help me figure out how to be a better person. Let me try to be worthy of you. For a long moment she was silent. Then she said carefully, you know I'm still military. Still have obligations. Still have nightmares and triggers and a whole lot of baggage that doesn't just disappear. I'm still a workaholic billionaire with control issues and emotional walls that would make a fortress jealous, he countered. We're both messes. But maybe we can be messes together. She smiled then, really smiled, and it transformed her entire face. Made her look younger, lighter, like some of the weight she'd been carrying had finally lifted. Okay. Yeah, okay. Let's be disasters together. But if you ever jump in front of another bullet, I'm going to kill you myself. Deal, he said, and then winced as laughing made his chest hurt. Easy, she said, her hand gentle on his arm. Doctor said you need to rest. No excitement, no stress, no dramatic gestures for at least 6 weeks. What about romantic gestures? Those are fine. Encouraged even. But they need to be the kind where nobody gets shot. I'll see what I can do. She settled back into her chair, but kept her hand in his. Sleep, she ordered. I'll be right here. You should rest too. You're injured. I'm fine. Amara. I said I'm fine. Now sleep or I'll get the nurse to sedate you. He wanted to argue, but exhaustion was already pulling him under. The last thing he saw before sleep claimed him was Amara's face, and the last thing he felt was her hand holding his. Recovery was slow and painful. Jae-min spent 2 weeks in the hospital, followed by months of physical therapy. The bullet had done significant damage, cracked ribs, torn muscle, narrowly avoided major blood vessels. The doctors told him he was lucky to be alive. Told him that 2 centimeters to the right and he would have died before the ambulance arrived. 2 centimeters between life and death. It made everything else seem absurdly insignificant. Amara stayed by his side through all of it. She'd taken medical leave from active duty, citing her own injuries, but Jae-min knew the truth. She was staying for him. making sure he healed properly, making sure he didn't push himself too hard or too fast. She turned out to be a terrible nurse, too impatient, too demanding, pushing him to work harder than his therapists recommended. But she was also exactly what he needed. She didn't coddle him, didn't treat him like he was fragile. She treated him like someone capable of healing, and somehow that made all the difference. They moved in together officially once he was cleared to leave the hospital. At first it was awkward, two people from completely different worlds trying to coexist in the same space. She was used to military discipline and order. He was used to luxury and convenience. They clashed over everything from how to organize the kitchen to what temperature to keep the thermostat. But slowly they learned to compromise. She taught him to appreciate simplicity. He taught her that comfort wasn't the same as weakness. She got him running in the mornings, once his chest healed enough. He got her to try restaurants that didn't have fluorescent lighting and plastic trays. They found a rhythm, a balance between his world and hers. 6 months after the attack, Jae-min did something he'd never done before. He stepped back from Park Industries. Not permanently but significantly. He appointed a COO to handle day-to-day operations, restructured to allow more work-life balance, and made it clear that his priorities had changed. His board thought he was having a breakdown. His competitors smelled blood in the water. But Jae-min found he didn't care. He'd spent 15 years building an empire, and in one night he'd nearly lost everything that actually mattered. That put things in perspective. Amara, meanwhile, struggled with civilian life. She missed the structure, the purpose, the clear mission that military service had provided. She had nightmares more frequently now. Guilt about leaving her unit, survivor's guilt from the attack, the weight of all the people she'd killed to keep Jae-min alive. One particularly bad night, Jae-min woke to find her sitting on their balcony at 3 in the morning, staring out at Seoul's lights with hollow eyes. "Can't sleep?" he asked, joining her. "Chukwuma was in my dream," she said quietly. "He was asking me why I survived when he didn't. What made me so special that I got to live and he had to die? What did you tell him?" "Nothing. I never have an answer." She looked at him. "I've killed 12 people, Jae-min. That I know of. Maybe more. And the worst part is I don't regret it. They were trying to kill you, and I'd do it again without hesitation. But what does it say about me that I can take lives so easily?" He sat beside her, taking her hand. "It says you're a survivor. Says you protect the people you love. It doesn't make you a monster, Amara. It makes you human." "Sometimes I'm not sure there's a difference." They sat in silence for a long time, watching the city slowly wake up. Finally, Jae-min said, "You need a purpose. Something beyond just surviving." "I know. I just don't know what. What if you helped other soldiers? The ones transitioning to civilian life, dealing with the same things you're dealing with?" She looked at him sharply. "What do you mean?" "A foundation. Support programs for veterans, particularly those with PTSD and trauma. You understand what they're going through better than any therapist. You could make a real difference." For the first time in weeks, he saw a spark of interest in her eyes. "You really think I could do that?" "I think you could do anything you set your mind to. And I think helping others might help you too." That conversation led to the creation of the Obi Park Foundation. Jae-min provided the initial funding and corporate infrastructure, but Amara built it from the ground up. She recruited other veterans, established partnerships with mental health organizations, created programs specifically designed to address the unique challenges soldiers faced when leaving active duty. It became her mission, her new battlefield. And watching her thrive, watching her channel all that warrior energy into something constructive and healing, gave Jae-min more satisfaction than any business deal ever had. 2 years after the night that changed everything, on a rainy evening that reminded them both of where they'd started, Jae-min asked Amara to marry him. He didn't do it with grand gestures or expensive displays. He did it simply, after they'd spent the day visiting the foundation's new facility, watching Amara work with a young veteran who'd been struggling with nightmares and survivor's guilt. They were back in their apartment, exhausted but content, and Jae-min just looked at her and said, "Marry me." She blinked, surprised. "That's your proposal? No speech? No ring?" "I have a ring," he said, pulling out a simple platinum band. "And I could give you a speech about how you changed my life, saved my life, gave my life meaning." But the truth is simpler than that. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to argue with you about stupid things. I want to be there for your nightmares and you to be there for mine. I want to build a life that's ours, not just mine or just yours. So, marry me." She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing the scar on his chest where the bullet had entered. The mark that proved he'd chosen her over his own life. Then she said, "I'm going to be a terrible wife. I don't know how to do domestic things. I'll probably always be a soldier first. And I can't promise I'll ever be comfortable at your fancy parties, or understand all the business stuff you do. I don't want a perfect wife. I want you. Nightmares, baggage, and all." She smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "Then yes. Yes, I'll marry you." They married 6 months later in a small ceremony outside Seoul. No media. No spectacle. Just close friends and family in a garden overlooking the mountains. General Morrison flew in to give Amara away, and even hard-edged Morrison had tears in his eyes when he handed her off to Jae-min. "You take care of her," Morrison said quietly. "She's one of the best." "I know," Jae-min replied. "I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of her." "You already are, son. You already are." Their life together wasn't easy. There were still nightmares. Still moments when Amara would wake up reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. Her body locked in fight or flight. Still days when Jaemin's old workaholism would rear its head and Amara would have to physically drag him away from his computer. But they worked at it. They went to therapy, both individual and couples. They learned each other's triggers and how to navigate them. They built a life together that honored both their pasts while creating something new. The Obi Park Foundation grew, expanding internationally. Hundreds of veterans found their way back from darkness through programs Amara had designed. Park Industries thrived under Jaemin's new, more humanistic leadership style. And Amara and Jae-min grew together, their love deepening with each challenge they faced. On their 5th anniversary, they returned to the military base where they'd first met. It had changed over the years, expanded and modernized. But the training yard where Amara had first rejected Jaemin's flowers remained the same. "You were so arrogant," Amara said, laughing at the memory. "Showing up with those ridiculous flowers like you could just buy my attention." "I was an idiot," Jae-min agreed. "But I was an idiot who knew what he wanted, even if I didn't understand why." "And what did you want?" "You." From that first moment, I just had to figure out how to be someone you might want back." She leaned into him, her head on his shoulder. "You know what the funny thing is? You didn't have to change. Not really. You just had to be willing to see me. To really see me, not just the soldier or the survivor, but all of it. The broken parts and the strong parts. And you did. You did the same for me." They stood there for a long time, watching new recruits run training drills, watching a new generation of soldiers prepare for battles they couldn't yet imagine. The world kept turning, kept fighting, kept struggling. But here in this moment Amara and Jae-min had found peace. Because in the end, the soldier who lived for duty and the billionaire who lived for power had both found something they'd never known before. Something worth dying for. And more importantly, something worth living for.
Subscribe for more amazing stories on this channel.